Good day. This is Jed Wonderly with Noble Home Loans Certified Mortgage Planner, and this is the third video that Brian, my special guest, and myself are doing. The first video was mostly about people who are looking at buying a home and how much of a down payment do they have and how much should they put down so that they can maybe, you know, keep some money for investing. The second video talked a little bit more about maybe you already own a home and you have some equity in it, and what is that equity doing for you? Would it be better if you pulled it out and get it invested? And then we also talked about some things within both of those videos that alluded to the rule of 72 and time value of money and that kind of thing. And I would highly recommend if you, one, looking at the first two videos that Brian and myself have done, but also looking at episode 3 of the series, How to Avoid the Most Common and Costly Mortgage Mistakes, which goes into a little more detail about the rule of 72, time value of money, leverage, and those kind of financial principles. Now, the thing that we want to talk about here is the earlier videos have talked about investing and creating that wealth and preparing for retirement. Well, if retirement's the end game, let's say you're there now, you've pulled out the money, or you didn't put it in your house in the first place, and you've invested it with Brian. By the way, my very special guest today is Brian Grantham. He's one of the principals at Mojave Capital. And Brian, tell them a little bit about yourself. You should already know this because you've seen the prior two videos, but in case you haven't, in case you're watching this one, we'll let Brian tell them a little bit about himself.
And I'll keep this short because I've seen this 2 other times. But again, as Jed alluded, or Jed said, I am a principal at Mojave Capital, a Nevada licensed and bonded private mortgage broker here, and I've been in the industry about 10 years. Plenty of experience. I was able to see the crash and live through it and learned a lot from it, and we've come out the other side swinging. So,
right. So, since you've watched the other two, or will watch the other two videos, what you know is that Brian provides private money lending that is funded by people like you who either decide not to put all of their money on a down payment. The example we've been using is if you have a $300,000 house, you have $150,000 to put down. Don't put $150,000 down, put $60,000 down and invest the rest. And watch those videos and you'll see why, and you'll see what that can do for you. And so now the very key thing is let's say you're 25, 30 years down the road and you've been reinvesting the dividends that Brian's been paying you on those investments. And you're to the point where you've made, you know, $2.5, $3.5 million. And none of that is too hard to do if you do the things that we've talked about in the first two videos. And so, Brian, let's say somebody's got $2 million. And you know they've followed our advice. They've opened up a self-directed Roth IRA, which is great for tax planning. And if you're self-employed, let's say that they've also done a self-directed solo 401k that has both a Roth bucket and a traditional bucket. And so anything in the Roth, you're able to pull out tax-free. So if you got $1 million, $2 million sitting in your Roth, you don't have to worry about paying taxes on anything you take out of there. That's the fantastic thing about a Roth. And if you got $2 million in there that you don't have to pay taxes on, especially if it started off as $90,000, that's incredible. The government is probably kicking themselves in the head. What the heck did we do? We're missing out on all those taxes. But that's a good thing. So Brian, I'm 65. I'm really not. But for this little scenario, we'll say I'm 65. I've been investing with you for 30 years, and I've got $2 million. What's my end game? What do I do now? I want to retire.
Well, the beautiful thing about first trust deed investing, as we've been talking about, is it all comes back to that realized gain. The fixed interest, the continuation of that.
Now,
So,
explain realized gain. What is realized gain?
so realized gain, there's two types of gains. You can have realized or unrealized. And as we've talked about in previous videos, unrealized gain is equity. Equity in stocks, equity in mutual funds. It's any gain, your house, any gain that at the end of the day is not in your pocket. You would have to sell that asset to actually get that gain.
To realize that
To
gain.
realize that gain.
Gotcha.
So for example, if you've got a stock portfolio that started at 500 grand and now it's $1 million, you have, in order to start taking income from that, you've got to start selling slowly or quickly, depending on how much money you need, selling off stock. And so then what's happening is you're realizing your gain, but you're also realizing your principal. And that's where you see those commercials, the ING commercials where everyone's carrying around their number, and it's these astronomical numbers. $6 million, $10 million, in order to be able to retire worry-free or retire without having to supplement. And the reality of that is because the traditional investment world has no end game. When bonds fell from the sky and became 0.5%, 1%, 0.25%, there's no more end game. That was the end game. When bonds were 10, 12, 14%, there was an end game. You could continue to make that fixed interest while you were in retirement, so you would sell off enough to only use your gains.
So just to be clear, there's a principle in investing that basically it's a rule of thumb that talks about your age should be the percent that you have invested in fixed income.
Rule of 100.
Yes. So if you are, say, 40 years old, you should have 40% in fixed income and 60% in equities, stocks, stock mutual funds, that kind of thing. So obviously the older you get, the more you should transition your portfolio from equity type investments into more stable fixed income investments. And what Brian is talking about is that as the yield on bonds dropped from, you could get good corporate bonds that are 6, 8, 10%, to, the yields have, gone down, and hard to find any bond with anything upwards of 2%. And most bonds, AAA rated government kind of bonds are going to be, next to nothing. You can get mortgage bonds with yields of, 3.5%, 4%, but, it's going to take an awful lot of money to invest in that to get the kind of income you want in retirement.
Correct.
In order to maintain a nice lifestyle. So, with that said, continue your scenario.
So, in that, had you taken that same dollar, that 500 grand, and you had turned it into $1 million, well, in your example, with your question, if it was now $2 million, when you have a realized gain, which is a gain that is actually given to you, you have it, you can hold it. Another word would be a dividend. If you're getting a dividend in these examples of 10, 12%, so just for the example, 12% is the easiest mathematically. If you're making a 12% rate of return on that $2 million, the simple answer is the end game is don't stop. Don't stop investing. Don't get out of the game and just start using your principal. The whole purpose of investing is to eventually live on your money that you've worked for, live on your interest. You invest to live on your interest. So if you have $2 million and you're making 12%, that's 1% every single month that you're going to make as income, that you could take as income. You're no longer compounding, but it's okay. You've already reached that point.
Although there might still be some compounding because...
It's true, because 1% is $20,000 a month.
Thank you.
On $2 million. So you might only have to live on 5, 7, 10, live a great life, travel, spend half the year in Europe. Take 10 grand a month.
Take 10 grand a month. It's tax-free, so that 20,000, it's tax-free if you have been investing in Roth, IRA, and solo 401k. So that's 20,000 real to you that you don't have to worry about paying taxes on.
Right.
So if, and check with your CPA in case there's some alternative minimum tax, but we always want to have that disclaimer. You always want to check with your CPA. But, so if we've got 20,000, they could take 10,000 a month, have a
Compound
heck of a
rest.
great life, and compound the rest so that maybe that income in another 5 or 10 years is 25,000 a month.
Correct. And what this means for those of you who have watched our other videos and said, you know what, I don't have 25 or 30 years to wait. Maybe you're in your 50s. Maybe you're getting close to retirement and your advisor's saying you don't have enough. You've got $500,000 in your portfolio, in your stock portfolio, you've got equity in your house, you've got cash, and your advisor's saying you don't have enough. If you're making 8, 10, 12% fixed interest, that nest egg that you have to accumulate comes way down. Now if you've got to make $10,000 a month and you've got Social Security that you can supplement with, but you've got $500,000 in your portfolio, that could be $5,000 a month interest, never touching your principal, just interest, $5,000 a month that you can now supplement with your Social Security, with your cash, with your other investments. It does not take as much as people, I've been told by our advisors, it does not take as much to retire when you can get into a vehicle like a first trustee that's going to produce you that fixed income. And the beauty of it is you know that you're getting that fixed income. It's set for a term. There's terms, there's conditions. In most cases, and we didn't mention this on other videos, so I hope that most of you have continued on with us. In most first trustees, at least with Mojave Capital, that interest is prepaid into a reserve. We collect, if it's a 12-month loan, we collect that interest reserve up front. So the borrower pays 100% of the interest on day one. So if it's a $100,000 loan at 10%, he's going to write a check for $10,000 on day one that goes into an escrow account, a loan servicing company. We use a third-party loan servicing. So we go with a third-party loan servicing company that is going to be responsible to pay those interest payments out. We do that for this reason. So many of my clients are reliant on this as their income. They live on this. If that check shows up, it's supposed to be on the 5th and it shows up on the 10th, my phone is going to be blowing up from people saying, where's my money? So if it's all prepaid, your interest is taken care of. You can now live a life where you know my interest check is going to be here on this day of every single month, like clockwork.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to worry about, I got to sell my stocks, I got to sell my bonds, I got to sell my mutual funds. Am I going to have enough? Am I using my principal? Do I need to go heavier on something else? Do I need to cut back? You can now actually budget. For the first time in most of our lives, you can actually budget your retirement and know what you're going to make and have the peace of mind to then say, I am going to go live the life that I want to live, and I'm going to go spend half the year in Europe, because you know that check is showing up without having to lose sleep at night worrying about the red and green arrows in the stock market.
So there's a couple of quick things before we wrap this video up that I want to just mention that Brian touched on. So let's go to the person that might be 50 or 55 that might be retiring in 10 to 15 years. And let's call it 12 to 15 for the sake of this video. If you're getting 10 to 12% return, you know, like if the notes that you're investing in with Brian are, you know, 10, 10.5, 11, 12%, then you're going to be doubling your money in, you know, roughly anywhere from 6 to 7.5, 8 years. So if you've got 15 years, you know, you've got basically 2 doubling periods, maybe 2.5 doubling periods, depending on the return you're getting. And with that, you're now able to go ahead and, if you've got a $500,000 portfolio, or if you've got, you know, maybe you don't want to cash out on all of that. Maybe you say, well, I'm going to put 250 of that in there, plus maybe you pull out, you know, $50,000 or $100,000 equity from your home. Let's say you invest $300,000 with Brian, and you still keep, because you want to diversify, $250,000 in your stock portfolio, and maybe you keep money in your 401k. But you know, if you're self-employed, you could put max fund your solo 401k that Brian has talked about in previous videos, and he can talk to you about how to set that up. But if you've got 2 doubling periods, regardless of whether they're in tax advantaged investments or not, and you've got $300,000, then in 2 doubling periods you've got 300 becomes 600 becomes $1.2 million. Mm-hmm. So now you've really been able to boost a good portion of your portfolio, and then who knows what the rest is going to do depending on what the stock market does. But you have a lot better idea of what something like what Brian can get you into is going to do. And then that $1.2 million, if you're getting 10 to 12%, if, let's say you're getting 10%. Now that in retirement, that $1.2 million at 10% per year, that's $120,000 per year, $10,000 per month that you're going to be able to get without touching your principal. You're going to be able to preserve your principal and have a nice lifestyle. And that's in addition to, like Brian said, anything you might get from Social Security, anything that you might have still from your, a 401k, or your stock portfolio or whatever. So, using the types of investments that Brian has to offer, it gives you a great opportunity to kind of catch up and do a little catch up, in the last 10 to 15 years. But also to realize that, oh man, I thought I needed $3 million in order to have the kind of income that I wanted, because most of the annuities that are out there are so low yielding. Whereas, now you could have $1 million, $1.5 million, something like that, and have a great income that you could even think about, hey, if I got $10,000 a month, I really only need to live on $6,000 or $7,000. You can invest the rest and continue to build that nest egg, and as that nest egg builds, your income builds so that there's more to reinvest. And now you're able to talk about legacy and funding foundations and things like that, where you can really help, and when you fund a foundation, have it invest in the kind of stuff that Brian has to offer, because now you're talking about being able to give back. You're talking about being able to leave some, a nice nest egg for your kids, being able to gift them, the down payment on their house, being able to set up a charity, a foundation where you'll be able to give to your local schools, colleges, any number of different things. Maybe somebody that's had cancer and you want to donate to various cancer, societies, foundations, and such. But you're able to do things that having money allows people to do, and not to mention just having a great retirement. So, Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that you took care of it. That's what you just said is what drives me to this industry. Not to get more onto a sentimental piece, but that's what drives me to this industry, and that's what made me focus so much on retirement accounts. So many people in this industry focus solely on cash, just strictly cash. They want cash. They want to fund loans. They want to make their points. They want to make their income as a broker. When I started working with retirement accounts, it's the little things. It's things what Jed just said that makes the difference here. Being able to show a person how, just by changing their course a few degrees, we're not talking drastically, giving your portfolio or your life a facelift. Changing a few degrees gives you that ability to get on the right track and make the money that you want to, do the things that you want to, but it's very rewarding, I guess is the word that I'm looking for me as a broker, to see people go from, I can't retire because some advisor tells me that I can't, to, wow, I could have retired a long time ago. That is rewarding, and that's what drives me into this business. I love real estate. I love first trustees. I love investments. But at Mojave Capital, we're not there for investments. If I want to do investments, I can go do them myself. I can go fund loans. I bring in strategic partners as investors because it actually puts you into a situation where you're going to be able to move forward and reach the goals that you have. And I guess that's my 2 cents there is there's more of a personal reason why I do this, and that's, you kind of hit a nerve there with those things. That's why I do this.
And I would echo those sentiments. You know, my parents have a foundation that they've set up and give to a lot of various, you know, charities and whatnot, a lot of schools. And I've always had the goal of being able to give back to my alma mater and help my kids and things like that. And for me, you know, it's like Brian said, I could do mortgages all day long, and that's a great thing. You know, if I'm making a good living, the more money I have, the more I'm able to, you know, do good things with it. But the flip side of that is if I can also share, you know, some of these strategies and principles and things with my clients to help them do the same thing, then we're really magnifying the amount of wealth that we can create, not for the sake of wealth creation, but for the kind of great things that we can achieve together doing this. I'm Jed Wonderly with Noble Home Loans, and I hope you've enjoyed this video series. If we can help out in any way, please feel free to call me, Jed Wonderly, Certified Mortgage Planner at Noble Home Loans, 702-812-1214. That's 702-812-1214. Or Brian Grantham, Principal at Mojave Capital, at 702-581-1181. That's
702-581-1181.
We're more than happy to help you with anything we can, you know, whether it's reviewing these principles that we've talked about specific to your situation, or just answering any other questions that you might have. We definitely want to do whatever we can to help you achieve your financial goals. We look forward to talking to you. And thanks, have a great day, and may the force be with you.